Hakioi listeners, let's learn sumo. I'm Clayton. Welcome to the podcast. Don't forget to join me at Instagram or YouTube even on Let's Learn Sumo, even X, you might find me there. Well, we're back in Australia and we're back in between bashos. So let's talk about why sumo are getting injured. The past 12 months have probably been punctuated by more injuries than usual, particularly in the top ranks of Ozeki and Sekiwake. Yokozuna's last 2 years have seen him miss more tournaments than he actually competes in, although the ones he does compete in, he usually wins. Now, you could claim that he has a distinct advantage as he can rest for 2 or 3 tournaments, keep his Yokozuna rank, and return at full power to take on the rest of the field at a time of his choosing. The rest of the field, with no rank protection if they get injured, is under pressure to compete every tournament lest they fall down the bunskei relatively quickly. Injuries have even resulted in retirements, as we saw this September in 2024 with longtime Ozeki Takakeisho retiring at 28 years old due to an ongoing serious neck injury, which is aggravated every time he hits at the tachiai. To put it in context, Midori Fuji is around the same age. It's been suggested in Japanese media and picked up by some Western media, even in Australia in the mainstream newspaper, that the Rikishi are now too big compared to years ago. But a reminder that in the 1980s, Hawaiian sumo Konishiki hit 287 kilograms or 633 pounds at his peak. His nickname was the Meat Bomb, and one of the most famous images is of Konishiki facing a much smaller wrestler. So, as a combat sport, we know that injuries are always a risk, and most wrestlers understand that being sumo is to manage their injuries as an expected part of the sport or lifestyle of being a rikishi. Carrying over 150 kilos and nearly 200 kilos normally puts enormous pressure on their hips and particularly their knees. The constant impacts affect the head and neck, leading to many wrestlers like Takakeisho and Enho who suffer serious neck and spinal issues. The forced eating diets that most wrestlers undertake from a young age to gain weight and bulk lead to liver, kidney, and other problems, and particularly as beer is used to add high carbs for weight gain. Diabetes and alcoholism is rife within this community of wrestlers. But are they too big? What are some of the causes otherwise of these regular injuries, and can they be minimised by the JSA? One of the first issues is the raised fighting ring or dohyo. It does cause a lot of injuries during the tournaments as wrestlers fall or are thrown from the height during the bout. Practice dohyos at the stables where they train are normally at ground height. Unfortunately, I don't see the JSA changing the height of the ring. One area that the JSA recently discussed was the reintroduction of a rank protection scheme on the Bunskei for injured wrestlers. The pressure for Rikishi to compete even when injured is immense, and as you saw in 2024, even Kirishima, the Ozeki, competed while injured and eventually lost his rank and returned to Sekiwake. To lose your rank can cost you almost an extra year to return to your previous rank, but if you can battle through and you can get a Kachikoshi or a close Makekoshi losing record, you can delay any drop and buy yourself time to recover from that injury. Sometimes it can be a poor strategy which can lead to even more injury or embed an injury as a longer term problem. The rank protection scheme was dropped by Sumo back in the late 70s, early 80s, due to wrestlers rorting the scheme to keep their rank. Certainly, as medical science has been improved and independent doctors and scans more prolific, that rorting would be less likely in the 2024 era. It's been suggested that the older style traditional training methods of sumo don't lend itself to good weight lifting practices, to good training practices, and that leads to injury. As you can see, some of the newer wrestlers like Onosato and Takeda Fuji have changed this style of sumo by bulking up in a larger way through weightlifting. But there's also been suggestions that the schedule of 6 tournaments a year with 15 bouts per tournament, plus regional Jungyo tours where wrestlers must participate unless they're medically excused, is just too much. Perhaps a rotational system for Jungyo regional tours where they alternate tours between wrestlers would take some pressure off. As I said, it's clear that some of the wrestlers have changed their style. Even some of the stables are changing the way they go about training. Those changes include, very successfully, Takeda and Onosato, who've used that extra muscle to blast opposition away. Ozeki Hoshoryu is certainly not as big as his fellow Ozeki Kotozakura, but he is stronger and has techniques that the larger Kotozakura probably can't implement because of his size. And they're just different wrestlers. As the sport becomes more professional, sumo appears to be one that is insulated from Western training methods to some extent. The very poor pay and prize money for professional sumo compared to overseas sports people, certainly Shohei Ohtani in baseball, probably restricts the improvement of training methods and the import of training specialist coaches, notwithstanding the cultural aspect of former sumo being almost exclusively used as coaches. You don't see many physiotherapists, doctors, personal trainers, and professional weight and bodybuilding experts in sumo like a lot of other sports. Perhaps that cultural wall is just too much. It's clear the JSA is trying to hold the wall from the Western world on sumo, protecting what is a unique sport in the world. And maybe that's why we like it, injuries and all. But that being said, wrestlers do try to protect each other, as you see in fights, and combat sport, injuries are expected. And in sumo, size can equate to power. But as the likes of Hoshoryu and Midori Fuji show, it's not just size that equates to winning. Technique, wiliness, and fighting spirit also win. So I doubt we'll see a BMI system brought in to control the size of wrestlers. But I think we will see at some point a rank protection scheme reintroduced. The advantage for the Yokozuna is just too much when he can take multiple tournaments off and the others are forced to fight. That's just my opinion. Hakuo listeners, let's learn sumo.